What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm the Krognak, and I am back with some states of metal. And we're going to take a little bit of a break from death metal. Don't worry, we're going to get right back to it because there's a lot of fucking death metal out there. But this is one I've been wanting to do for a while, so we are going to go to Massachusetts and we are going to go over their metalcore and hardcore scene. So, Massachusetts, what do I know about it? I've been there once when I was a kid, went to Cape Cod. I went to like a rinky-dink fucking SeaWorld place. I got head-butted by a dolphin. That actually happened. I went over and leaned over the tank. Fucker jumped up and just smashed me in the fucking face. Don't remember much after that, but I know that that happened. Lots of sports franchises with lots of fucking trophies. I'm pretty sure most kids' first words there are Red Sox. Unless they're wicked smart, then they say Fenway. Probably gonna have to send that kid Harvard. I know that driving there, at least in the Boston area, is fucking maddening. Their road maps look like fucking tangled yarn, and yeah, you just pretty much have to survive. Everyone there drives aggressive as fuck, and yeah, that's pretty much the way. The term masshole, I think, probably just came out courtesy of everyone fucking trying to drive there and I'm getting the fuck out of here, otherwise I'm gonna fucking die. As far as other stuff I know they love the Kennedys. The whole Kennedy family is like the royal fucking family of Massachusetts, and they absolutely love the fuck out of New Yorkers. That is 100% true. But another thing they were known for during the late 90s all the way to like the mid to late 2000s was their metalcore scene. That scene really exploded back then and pretty much kind of just washed over this entire country in terms of like metalcore becoming the popular form of metal in the mid to early 2000s. Now I know metalcore is almost greeted as a dirty word to some degree. Not so much hardcore, but metalcore, a lot of people have their misgivings about it, but I'm still kind of a fan of it, especially this era because this is where I got into it. And Massachusetts kind of became this epicenter for the style itself. They had the New England Hardcore Metal Fest that ran on for a number of years and brought a whole bunch of fucking bands to the surface. And in the scene, we still have long tenured bands that are still going, that still put out really killer music, as well as some crossover successes that happened during its height. So once again, I have 10 albums here that I think embody the scene and in different sorts of styles within the scene because there was a lot of variety within it. And there's definitely going to be some very familiar ones on here, but there might be some slightly more underground or overlooked ones in here. But pretty much I just picked these because I think they represent how cool this fucking scene was at one point. And to a degree, still is, because some of these bands are still kicking around and some of these bands are actually like reforming and getting their shit together and coming out with new music. But anyway, let's go over what we got here. Converge Jane Doe. We're kicking off with a fucking big one here. It's the fourth album from the Salem band. This was the first exposure I had to the band Converge, and I have been a diehard fan ever since. This would end up becoming probably their landmark release, and with good fucking reason. This is one of the most visceral metalcore albums there fucking is still. The first three albums they had before that I thought were really good, but I feel like they were still trying to find their sound, and they fucking found it on here. And I think that was partially due to getting Nate Newton on bass and Ben Kohler on drums. They have become integral to the band's sound overall, and this is just an absolutely explosive, visceral album. I would say this is a metalcore album that is on par in terms of the intensity that you find in grindcore and power violence. Jacob Bannon's vocals are feral, they're very emotional. This album, I believe, is at least semi-conceptual in terms of it being about the long, horrible dissolution of a relationship and how ugly it is, and you go through pretty much every negative emotion you possibly can go through on here, and the music matches the intensity. It's explosive, the riffs are dissonant and ugly and kind of crawl over the place. Kurt Ballou is a fucking legend in terms of just ugly, dissonant riffs and his great production. But for me, it's Ben's drum performance, which is absolutely fucking insane. His insane drum performance gives this such a fucking wild and frantic feel. It's almost hard to fucking keep up with all the shit he's doing. And after seeing Converge multiple times live, man, that dude is just a fucking master. Just uses a small kit and just fucking wails on that thing. As much as this album is known for its ferocity, there are some really cool bluesy moments on Hell to Pay, but when you get down to songs like Homewrecker and The Broken Vow and Heaven in Her Arms, the hardcore fucking nasty underbelly of this band really fucking shows. But I like the fact that they include a lot of atmosphere, like there's a lot of tension that is built up. And man, the title track on here is absolutely monolithic. Over 10 minutes long, It's slow, it's brooding, it's dark, it's just an ugly, kind of almost doomy song, but surprisingly it includes a lot of great melodies on here. To say this album is influential is pretty much an understatement. There are so many bands that definitely cite this as a big influence just in terms of, again, the ferocity and how fucking insane the songwriting is. I would even say its influence extends beyond the whole metalcore scene itself and to just extreme metal in general. I don't know if this is my favorite Converge album because they have put out a lot of killer fucking albums, like Axe to Fall is fucking amazing, No Heroes is fucking great too. They just write killer fucking shit. And this, I think, is where they really just kind of got together, honed their sound, and this has become kind of the template that Converge has built on ever since. So of course, if you have never jammed this album, I strongly recommend it. If you still think like metalcore is a dirty word and you're looking for something a tad more extreme, it's fucking this. This is an absolutely monstrous fucking album that has retained its fucking edge and its ferocity for over 20 years now. So yeah, check it out. Cave In, Until Your Heart Stops. Yeah, the case for this one bit it a long time ago, but got the CD, that's the most important part. Anyway, this is the debut album from this Methuen, I think that's how you say the town, Massachusetts band. At this point in their career, they were flat out metalcore, and this is honestly one of my favorite like underground metalcore albums that I don't think gets nearly enough love. Now the main man behind this band is one Stephen Brodsky, and at one point he was a member of Converge. In fact, he played bass in that band for a while, and then he split off to do his own thing, and that turned out to be Cave In. And at this point in their career, they were a flat out nasty metalcore band. Later on, they would change their sound and, I don't know, really just sort of embrace a ton of different styles, like atmospheric stuff, more alternative rock, but still would keep like a heavy edge to their sound overall. But at this point, they were just fucking flat out vicious, and they would demonstrate their very interesting songwriting style in here. There's a lot of carryover and comparisons, I would say, to Converge in here, but I think more groove. There's a little bit more of just straightforward hardcore and thrashier riffs on here. And the riff work on here, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Brodsky is a very creative writer. He likes to inject weird, strange, sort of spacey tones, but he also just likes to lay down fucking vicious chugging and just gnarly riffing across the board. And this is the album for that in terms of Cave In. This is definitely more groove-laden and more breakdown heavy, especially songs like Moral Eclipse, Halo of Flies, and Terminal Deity. In fact, the opening breakdown to Terminal Deity pretty much lives rent-free in my head still. Now, as much as Caleb Schofield was known for his giant fucking hardcore roars, but Caleb stepped in not long before recording. They had another bassist and he dropped out, and Caleb said, yeah, I can fucking do it. And then later on they found out he had these fucking massive roars and was like, yeah, no, you might be our fucking growler for a while. But as much as this is just a nasty, brooding, just chug heavy release with lots of noisy sections, there's a lot of stuff that would become, you know, more like hallmarks of their sound later on, like the spacey atmosphere and more kind of melodic passages like Segway or Segway 1, I forget which it's called. I really wish I had the track list, but this is all I got. But I like that this album stepped outside of contemporary song structure, much like Converge did. The song The End of Our Rope Is a Noose actually has some flat out sludge riffs, like almost kind of comparable to Crowbar, but it also has like spacey atmospheric synths to kick it off too. And again, there's a lot of interesting like moods explored on this, and there's definitely some weird noisy sections on Bottom Feeder and Controlled Mayhem Then Erupts. In fact, the whole back half of that song is just fucking ear-bleeding noise. And I think that would carry over to another project that Brodsky would be in later on, Old Man Gloom, which they fucking love their noise too, but they also love their sludge. Anyway, I think this is an absolutely fantastic album. I would definitely say it's their heaviest album, but it also shows off their artistic side and knack for strange songwriting, but at the same time still flexes all the fucking metalcore muscles that it needed to. I do think a lot of their later stuff is really good as well. I think, honestly, their new one is probably my new favorite. Heavy Pendulum was a year-ender for me if anyone watched that video. But this is where it started, and again, this is a vastly different album from a lot of the stuff they've done, especially when you compare this to Jupiter, the next full length. We're talking night and fucking day. But this, an absolute fucking beast of an album. Strongly recommend checking it out. Overcast Fight, Ambition to Kill. This is the second album from this then Ashland-based metalcore act. And I think this band would kind of be like the progenitors of the big shift in metalcore style towards melody and really kind of taking more cues from metal than they did core, or at least I guess you can call it the melodic metalcore sound that would become popularized by later bands that two of the members in here would be involved in, because this featured Mike D'Antonio on bass, who would later go on to join Killswitch Engage, and Brian Fair on vocals, who would later join the band Shadows Fall. And believe me, we're going to bring up those bands later. But this is one of the early bands that really embraced the more melodic metalcore sound and kind of took more cues from, I would say, like death metal, like melodic death metal, and I would even say like groove metal and thrash. The riff work on here is decidedly more metallic, like it doesn't scream hardcore all the time. Brian Fair's vocals, he would flirt with more melodic passages like spoken word and even singing, but he would deliver like giant fucking hardcore growls as well. And listening to this now, I feel like it has more in common with a lot more metal bands. Like this almost sounds like sort of like an early Lamb of God album. Lots of groove, lots of melodic lead passages, like the lead guitars kind of became a bigger thing in terms of the overall metalcore style with this album, I think. You have elements of melodic death metal that show up on songs like Spun and Dousing This Flame, and at this point, the influence from across the pond from bands like In Flames and At the Gates, namely, was really starting to creep in the metalcore sound. You have more clean guitar sections on here, again, with more pronounced melodies, and of course, great riffs, but I think the riffs on here definitely screamed more hooky. Like they were definitely focused more on melody and making some legit earworms rather than, you know, kind of going the fuck off and letting all the rage loose. Definitely seemed like they let the rage loose, especially on songs like Your Destructive Self, 7 Foot Grin, and the last track, Forecast, has a flat-out giant slam riff in it. Like, it's a slam fucking breakdown, and it's fucking heavier than hell. But the riff work on More Metal Than Your Ma's Kettle, I fucking love that song title. Dude, it's just very thrashy, very loose, and again, it's very catchy. And while this band didn't get that popular, in fact, I think they broke up not too long after this album, they did lay the groundwork for what would become pretty much the prevailing style in terms of metalcore in the early to mid 2000s. And again, two of the members on here would end up becoming members of two of the most important bands, I would say, in the whole fucking Massachusetts metalcore scene later. So yeah, kind of an underrated one, kind of overlooked overall just because, again, very overshadowed by the later bands that the more famous members were in, but still awesome. They did reform for a little bit. I believe they're still listed as active, but that's kind of hard to say. I haven't heard much about them like touring or working on a new album, but they did have a comeback album, I believe it was called Reborn to Kill. It was pretty solid too, but I recommend the old stuff. Definitely check this one out. It's just fucking solid. And like I said, if you liked later stuff like Killswitch Engage and Shadows Fall and probably some other bands I'm going to bring up, definitely check this out. Killswitch Engage, Alive or Just Breathing. It's the second album from this Westfield, Mass metalcore act. Pretty much the band you think of when it comes down to melodic metalcore, and I would say between this and Jane Doe, those are probably some of the most important releases in terms of the scene, because this is the one that sort of broke big. Like there was a fair amount of crossover success. In fact, I would credit this album, at least for me, being kind of a new metal killer. We were looking for a new sound. This album came out, and believe me, you would hear elements from this album on pretty much every metalcore or at least melodic metalcore band that would come out after it, because they did pretty much everything right on here. This album brought all the fucking crushing riffs you could ever ask for, but this also brought like melody, and melody became a much bigger thing on here. What Overcast did in the early years was still really solid, but this band took that sound and refined it, especially since they had a really solid singer in Jesse Leach. He had great hardcore growls, vicious screams, but then he could just switch gears to this very melodic crooning, and man, did this band write a fuck ton of anthems on here. These songs would become legit sing-alongs, and they would pretty much cement this band as being one of the bigger metal acts of the mid-2000s. Songs like Fixation on the Darkness, Life to Lightless, My Last Serenade, I mean, they became instant sing-alongs, and again, like this became kind of like the standard in terms of metal that was coming out, and for me at least really brought my attention to the whole Gothenburg melodic death metal scene. I picked up this album, well, not this edition, this is the special edition I got later because I wore my original version of this the fuck out to the point it wouldn't play anymore. But yeah, it was this album that really kind of made me check out bands like In Flames and fucking At the Gates, Dark Tranquillity, Hypocrisy, because they had similar elements to it. Except for maybe this band was like, yeah, maybe a little bit more in love with the breakdowns. And there are fucking great breakdowns all over here. Do Temple from Within, Vita Infra. If you're looking for something a little bit more heavy on this album that doesn't have as much attention on the giant sing-along choruses, those songs still fucking rip. And I have to say, I love the production on here. Adam D pretty much became kind of a force in terms of production as well after this, because he just got this great rich guitar sound that just absolutely drove home all the melodies, all the leads on here, and just the absolutely crushing riffs. And he would go on to produce a lot of fucking albums when he wasn't writing fucking killer music in this band. This is still a favorite of mine. I still come back to this one quite frequently. I mean, I really love And a Heartache too. Like, Howard Jones was also an awesome vocalist for him, and they wrote some amazing music with him. But this is where it all started for me. I got the self-titled one much later, but yeah, this is just an absolutely killer release. And pretty much that perfect balance of melody and brutality for me. Honestly, that kind of got me into the whole like Beauty and the Beast sort of dynamic in terms of having like harsh vocals all throughout the fucking verses and then having this giant epic chorus. These guys fucking crushed that formula. So much so that, I mean, we could bring up the fact that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, because there were a fuck ton of Killswitch Engage clones that came out after this album broke big. And some of them are really fucking good. And then others didn't last very long because, well, you know, once one thing breaks big, the next thing that happens is generally an oversaturation in the market, so you got a whole bunch of bands that kind of sounded like second grade versions of Killswitch Engage. And the original was still putting out killer music anyway. Believe me, I know, because I bought a lot of them. But yeah, I still love this album. I still think it's fucking absolutely amazing. I would say pretty much a classic of the genre itself. If you've never checked this out, maybe again you have some misgivings about metalcore in general, this album still absolutely whoops ass, and I still come back to it quite often. So yeah, check it out. Unearth, The Oncoming Storm, the second album from this Boston metalcore act. Pretty much this was one of the bands that I guess I was kind of talking about in terms of the next wave of metalcore that seemed very, very fucking influenced by Killswitch Engage. But I would say that this band only partially took some of that sort of formula from Killswitch Engage, because there's a lot more throwbacks to classic heavy metal on here. This was the thing that I really liked about Unearth, and still actually like about Unearth, is the balancing out of the more hardcore side of metalcore, but mixing in like classic heavy metal harmonies and leads on here. That was kind of their big thing. Like, there's a lot of like Iron Maiden and like sort of like Angel Witch energy coupled with like, you know, the same shit you would hear in Killswitch Engage, or even going back to like, you know, more harsher metalcore like Earth Crisis. Songs like Black Hearts Now Rain and Zombie Autopilot both showcase how fucking flat out heavy they can be, but again, show off the soaring heavy metal harmonies that are over here. And I have to say that they put a good focus on lead guitar work on here in general. Like, everything is accented. Like, this doesn't just rely on the beat downs, and it doesn't have clean vocals on here really, except for like a couple of like backup vocals that are a bit cleaner, because Trevor Phipps actually has just a flat out hardcore delivery. It's very powerful, and he doesn't necessarily need all the extra sing-songy bits because they have all this great guitar work going on behind it. I first heard about this band courtesy of the Headbangers Ball compilation. I believe it came out in 2003, and it had the song Endless on it, and I really fucking dug that. Love the breakdowns on it, and the breakdowns in here are fucking pummeling, like This Lying World and Lie to Purify, and I would even say Bloodlust of the Human Condition, but that one gets me because of the absolutely awesome fucking lead work on it. But I immediately latched on the song Endless and was like, dude, this is fucking awesome. Then I found out that Adam D did the production on it, and yeah, it pretty much just checked off everything that I was getting into in terms of the whole metalcore scene. I mean, even the album cover, like, you look at this and this screams, I'm a fucking metalcore album. play me if you want to fucking mosh. And that's something that I really like about this album. As much as metalcore was becoming very popular, and again, you had that sort of, you know, harsh verse, big chorus formula that Killswitch put out that a lot of bands were going after. These guys kind of skipped over that. It's like, no, let's just make it about like the lead guitar work and really just deliver some of the heaviest music we can without doing a lot of clean vocals. These guys seemed less concerned with accessibility and more concerned with just delivering really solid music. And that isn't to knock a bunch of bands that went for like the big sing-songy metalcore stuff that came out later after Killswitch. There's a lot of bands that did really well with that too, but I like this one for its more raw, primal fucking vibe to it. And again, riffs, melodies, it's catchy without being too sing-songy, and it still captures a lot of that old hardcore energy. So yeah, if you have never jammed Unearth, I strongly recommend this one. Their follow-up to this one is also amazing, In the Eyes of Fire. Nothing but fucking bangers in that one, but this was the one that got me into them, so I put this one up here because it's a little bit more important to me. But honestly, I'd still say check out In the Eyes of Fire because that album fucking rips too. But yeah, just check out Unearth because they're fucking awesome and I think they don't get enough love. Have Heart, Songs to Scream at the Sun. This is the second and final full length from this Boston straight edge hardcore group. They broke up about a year after releasing this, and this kind of became like their seminal album. Like, this is the one that everyone talks about. And I did say metalcore and hardcore. I did want to pepper in some hardcore too. And this one has always stood out to me as just an absolutely killer release that kind of went outside of a lot of the hardcore tropes. Like, yes, it definitely has breakdowns and has all the hardcore riffs, and you know, it's very angry and very in your face, but it's also very emotional. And instead of like going with the more tough guy, hardcore fucking attitude, like don't fuck with me, I'll fucking kick your teeth in, it was more about like personal struggles and sort of, you know, being emotionally exposed. You know, more earnest than it was angsty, but it still packed a fuck ton of angst. Now I know, hearing all that, you probably think, oh, that sounds like a fucking emo band. And it's not. It's a hardcore band that actually, you know, talks about emotions. Not the same as emo. There are no bullshit fucking whiny Warped Tour fucking vocals on here at all. This is all fucking passionate fucking growls and screams, and more like a punk side to the whole metalcore hardcore sound. Like, there's a lot more punk riffs, a lot more D beats. There's still some great fucking breakdowns on here, but what I really like about this is the melody that is sort of infused in that. You have a lot of passionate gang vocals and even crowd vocals, especially the last track, The Same Sun, where it sounds like the entire crowd singing back to them, even though this isn't a live album, so I guess they had a whole bunch of fans in the studio where they recorded that live. I don't know. Either way, very effective. It also couples well with all the cool fucking melodies that are on here, like No Roses, No Skies. Brotherly Love, I think, is particularly fucking good. And On That Bird in a Cage has some absolutely just beautiful fucking melodies that complement the passionate fucking outpouring that is on here. But it's important that there's a balance on here of like the hardcore fucking vicious energy. And while it might not be like so much in the, you know, lyrics necessarily, it's in the delivery and the intent, because a lot of this is very similar to a band like Give Up the Ghost or American Nightmare or American Nothing. I was going to put that band on here, but Jesus Christ, that band has changed their name quite a bit and broken up quite a bit. Now again, this band broke up about a year after this release, and pretty much I've seen nothing but love for this album. I know they've done some reunion shows, but pretty much nothing in terms of like committing to actually coming back and, you know, putting out another album. It's just every now and then they do some reunion shows and then that's it. But I suppose if you're going to leave off your career, leave off on a high note, and this is just an absolutely fantastic album. It's very short, like it's only a little bit over 20 minutes, which is like kind of an EP by most band standards, but it is absolutely packed. It feels like a very complete listen, and I absolutely love it. It's just crushing fucking hardcore with great melodies, and I don't know, it feels, again, emotionally honest, and I kind of just dig that about it. So yeah, if you like your hardcore a little bit more on the melodic side, but, you know, still gets rowdy, still gets fucking vicious, but at least it'll tell you about its problems before it breaks everything in your fucking house, definitely check this out. Great fucking stuff. Death Before Dishonor, Count Me In. This is the third album from this Boston hardcore act, and this is that tough guy shit. Like, this is essentially East Coast fucking terror. These guys are fucking in your face. The production here may be a little bit more metallic. Like, the guitars in here are fucking chunky as hell. it still packs all the old school hardcore fucking attitude, the riffs and the fucking D beats and just the pummeling breakdowns. But there's like a little bit of metal to it, but I really wouldn't call it metalcore very much. Like you have some more metal riffs on Curl Up and Die and Break Through It All. But the whole thing on here is about the fucking muscle and the fucking attitude and how they're gonna fuck you up if you fucking get in their fucking way or fucking fuck over one of their friends, because yeah, it sounds like they're down to fucking brawl at any given fucking second on here. Now compared to Have Heart, this is definitely less reflective and more empowering. This is designed to get the blood boiling and of course to get the fucking pit spinning. Like this is the kind of band that if they come on the stage like, all right, well here comes the fucking pit karate, I better back the fuck up, or otherwise I'm gonna be spitting teeth later. The vocals have like a just straightforward hardcore delivery. They're fucking gruff. The cadences are just fucking great. I love the riff work on here. It's, again, tight. It's very primal, kind of one gear. But the gear that it stays in is very energetic. It just keeps hammering you over the fucking head with just pummeling fucking riff after pummeling riff. And breakdown after breakdown, especially when you get down to like Take Me Away. Jesus Christ, that song's fucking heavy. This album is essentially like a fucking boulder rolling downhill into a fucking unsuspecting town that just does not have any clue what's coming for them. And that's generally something I look for in hardcore. I want it to be like a fucking downhill race. I want the energy to fucking stay up. There doesn't have to be a lot of variety, even though I do appreciate that in a hardcore album. But mostly it's about the energy. It's just about like fucking just staying right in your fucking face the entire time and telling me about how much you want to kick someone's ass. Hopefully not mine. We're good. I didn't say shit, but I could have sworn I heard some other dude over there talking about your mama or something. I think the only time that this album kind of gets off of the tracks is the last track, Boston Belongs to Me, which is like a fun like oi punk sort of anthem, like kind of similar to Dropkick Murphys, except maybe more violent. Like I'm reasonably sure fucking Dropkick Murphys are down to throw down at any given moment, but I think these guys are probably gonna jump in quicker. Like before even the first shout comes out, one of these dudes has already fucking chucked a chair at you. But hey, maybe after the dust settles, they'll fucking buy you a beer and like, hey man, sorry we got in that tussle, but I mean, you shouldn't go talking shit about the fucking Red Sox, man. Anyway, this album is an absolute bruiser. I still need to get more of their albums. I only own 2 of them and they're both fucking awesome, so eventually just gonna have to go out and get the other ones. But yeah, Death Before Dishonor is no bones about it fucking hardcore. It stays in your face. It fucking keeps kicking you while you're down. But, you know, again, might buy a beer later. I don't know. Probably shouldn't talk shit. That's my guess there. But yeah, definitely check this out. Fucking awesome album. All Pigs Must Die. God is War. This is the debut full-length from this metalcore / hardcore supergroup, pretty much all based out of Massachusetts. Well, at least most of the members, but I'm gonna have to read over the members because everyone in this band was actually a part of something in the hardcore, metalcore, or even like kind of grindcore scene, at least in New England in general. So you have Brian Izzy, ex-Trap Them on guitars, Matt Woods, ex-Give Up the Ghost on bass. I believe he's on bass. I should have wrote that down. Ben Kohler of Converge on drums, Adam Wentworth, ex-The Red Chord. I believe he is on guitars. And Kevin Baker, the frontman of the Hope Conspiracy on vocals. So I got a chance to bring up a lot of bands that are kind of in that scene, which is cool because I wanted to actually include them in this, but I could only do 10 because that's essentially what I've set for myself in these videos. But yeah, all these guys came together and formed quite possibly one of the heaviest, ugliest fucking metalcore / hardcore bands in this entire scene. This band lays on the dark, dismal side of metalcore, a little bit more crust-oriented, and I would even say like a little bit on the black metal side in terms of some of the songs, like Third World Genocide and The Blessed Void have more cold tremolo riffs mixed in, but you also have death metal tremolos that pop up in here. But there's also a lot of raw, nasty crust punk in here just to give it a more disgusting fucking sound overall. This is very distant, very ugly, not a tremendous amount of like very catchy melodies at all. I would say maybe the last track, Sadistic Vindicator, has some more earwormy, dissonant melodies on here, but a lot of this is just about the fucking brutality. Out of the bands that they're all involved in, I would say it's probably closer to Trap Them and Converge overall, and probably just as unforgiving too. This album does not relent. I don't think there is a moment on here where it takes its foot off the gas, unless it's to deliver an absolutely crushing breakdown. Like Pulverization, the end of that song is absolutely fucking crushing, but I love the absolute crust fucking sound that is on Sarcassanct. I think that's an absolutely amazing song and really cool bass work on it. But what I think is really cool about this is, as primal as it is, it really does a good job with the song building with just such minimal elements. Like, this is very raw and in your face, very primal sounding. It doesn't try to deviate much from the formula, but the songs are constructed well and they build well. Like, there's really cool like swells in terms of the energy and build-ups on it, especially the last track. Again, Sadistic Vindicator is one of my favorite tracks on here. Slower, more brooding, more dark, but there's an excellent build-up to this just fucking crushing crescendo at the end. Like, I guess you could say it's kind of melodic, but mostly it's just fucking dark sounding. And credit where credit's due, it's a Kurt Ballou production, so of course it sounds heavier than fucking everything else, unless that everything else was also fucking produced by Kurt Ballou. I want to say I bought this just because the album cover just screamed, oh my god, this is going to be fucking insanely heavy. And I was fucking right. But I became a fucking fan, and again, in a world where there's a lot of supergroups that don't necessarily live up to the fucking hype, this band definitely does. The two albums that followed this are also incredible, but this is where I started, and honestly, this is the one that I like coming back to the most, because I think this is like the most punky, fucking gnarly, hardcore version of them, because they got even heavier later on. In fact, I'd say their last album possibly was their heaviest one yet. So I'm just gonna say, go ahead and check out all their albums, but this is definitely the place to start. Absolutely vicious, fucking scathing metalcore slash hardcore. I don't know, it's kind of somewhere in between, because again, like, a lot of the roots feel very closer to the hardcore side, but this definitely has a lot of fucking metal to it. If you're a fan of Converge and Trap Them especially, I think you're probably gonna like it, but yeah, definitely check this one out. It's fucking awesome. Within the Ruins, Phenomena. This is the fourth album from this Westfield metalcore act, and this is where we get more into like modern metalcore, or at least the sound that kind of took over in the late 2000s. This band, I guess you could label them as progressive metalcore or modern metalcore, or even like gent to some degree. It's definitely like gent-infected metalcore in terms of the rhythms, like lots of fucking like staccato guitars and like, you know, palm muted fucking chuggy breakdowns. But they kind of lean a little bit more on early Meshuggah, but that isn't the thing that jumps out to me that makes this band so much fucking fun. This band loves quirky guitar work. That is my main draw to this band. Everything else is very just straightforward, fun fucking metalcore. Like, it's well executed. All the fucking, you know, boxes are checked. You got, you know, great hardcore vocals, really good fucking, you know, pummeling drum work and all that shit. But the guitar work in here is just ridiculously fun. Lots of like video game sounds and weird fucking, you know, combinations of effects to make, well, just kind of wild, engaging melodies all over here. Like, everything on here is very breakdown centric. Like, this is kind of like that August Burns Red style of metalcore in terms of like just keep laying on the breakdowns and, you know, figure out some fun stuff to kind of make them stand out. But these guys throw in, again, a little bit of that gent flavor, though I don't think much on here gets outside of 4/4 time, so it's not like a confusing polyrhythm all the time. But it's these little fun melodies that are all over here. And the guitarist, Joe Kochi, I believe that's his name, is an absolutely amazing guitarist. Like, you get great leads on here with loads of fucking melody, lots of shreddy leads, but a lot of it is just sort of like peppered in arpeggios and these cool little like weird effects and melodies that he peppers in there. And honestly, that kind of keeps it fresh, because again, you know, going back to the breakdown, well, that kind of became a common complaint about a lot of metalcore. If you're not doing something very interesting over these breakdowns, whether it's like a cool vocal pattern or something that kind of breaks it up a little bit, they kind of get stale. These guys found a way to make them very interesting and have a lot of fun with it. I bring up video game music because that is kind of like the thing that people seem to compare them to in terms of like their overall sound, with all the little bleeps and sweeps that are on there. Like, it kind of sounds like, you know, a guitarist, you know, playing Super Nintendo music. But that goes a step further with the instrumental on here, Enigma. They actually squeeze in the theme to Inspector Gadget and Super Mario Brothers on there, and they do it beautifully and integrate it into a really clever fucking instrumental. But their overall sound, they do extraordinarily well, and it's very catchy, and they find ways to implement really clever melodies all throughout, like the opening track, Gods Amongst Men. Calling Card, I think, is absolutely amazing, and if you want some flat out, like, Meshuggah worship, the song Ronin is an absolute fucking banger. But overall, it's the fact that this is both very musically competent, like it's very fucking tight, it's well orchestrated, but it's fun to listen to. Like the melodies are very engaging, and they don't always come across as very campy. Like I think the whole chorus, melody that comes in with this weird like delayed effect on Calling Card, it's particularly haunting, and they actually come up with a good, clever chorus for it. And a lot of the lyrical themes, as kind of goofy as the music might sound to some people, are pretty serious. Like they're talking about like, cults and fucking religious brainwashing and shit like that. And that's pretty heady for a band that sounds like they're just doing like, Metroid music and shit. I still love this album. In fact, I like most of their albums. I didn't get their last one, but I had the one before that, and I think that was the last one with the singer that was on here, which I really enjoyed the singer that was on here, but I guess he left the band. I did get a chance to see these guys, I believe, at Summer Slaughter 2014, and they put on a fucking hell of a show. But yeah, this was a lot of fun to return to. I strongly urge you guys to check this one out. This is definitely more modern metalcore. Like, you're gonna hear a lot of tropes that I think are still repeated in metalcore bands today. But I think they're done with a little bit more flair, a little bit more inventiveness, and definitely a lot more fun. So yeah, definitely check this one out. Check out a lot of their earlier stuff. Like, everything before this too is also really good. But yeah, this one, I don't know, possibly my favorite by him, but either way, just check out this band because they're fucking awesome. And finally, we have Shadows Fall, The Art of Balance. This is their third album, came out in 2002. Another fucking killer Boston band, definitely one of the more well-known ones in terms of the metalcore scene. And as much as I want to call this band a thrash metal band, because I think at their core, they are definitely a fucking thrash metal band. But they are a metalcore band. Like, that is what they are. It's just their style definitely kind of stepped outside of, the bulk of the whole melodic metalcore movement, I would say, that was kind of taking over in Massachusetts and kind of in metalcore as a whole. This band has a fucking throwback sound to like classic 80s and early 90s thrash metal. This still packs all the breakdowns, all the fucking hardcore vocals, but there are so many nods to Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, like a lot of big four fucking thrash worship, as well as like Testament and fucking Exodus. John Dene's fucking lead work on here. This dude is a fucking shred machine, and he's currently fucking killing it right now in Anthrax. But before that, he was in this band, and this was the band I would say that all the fucking classic metalheads gave a pass as far as the metalcore scene, like, because there was still, like, I don't like this, it's fucking whatever. But Shadows Fall came on, and like, oh, this is fucking good, because, it reminds me of shit that I listened to earlier, so maybe I'll give these guys a pass. So in terms of a band maybe appealing to like a slightly older fan base that wasn't necessarily into hardcore or metalcore, these guys did a great fucking job, and they did it with absolutely fucking amazing songs. Their songwriting skill, I think, was, in terms of the metalcore scene in Massachusetts, some of the best. Stepping Outside the Circle, Thoughts Without Words, the absolutely beautiful interlude Casting Shade, which I generally skip over interludes, but oh my god, the acoustic harmonies on that fucking instrumental are fucking beautiful. Hell, even the title track has an almost power ballad-like feel, and Mystery of One Spirit has a lot of fucking Iron Maiden guitar flourishes on it. This is such an awesome album and just such an awesome band, and man was I bummed when they broke up. But they have been reuniting for shows here lately. They've been practicing together, so who knows, maybe a new Shadows Fall album is on the horizon. I don't know, I can't really confirm or deny anything, but it seems like there are gears in motion, and I am all for it. Oh, and the amazing cover of Welcome to the Machine at the end is absolutely jaw-dropping. I like how they turned that into almost a kind of doomy, fucking slow, nasty song. I love the original. It's one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs. I think it's one of the darkest Pink Floyd songs they've ever written. I love the doomy synths that are over here. And I like how they incorporated the synths, but they made it a guitar-driven song, and It's simply amazing. I had the pleasure of seeing these guys multiple times. I want to say 4 times. They always fucking crushed it live. And I'm hoping I'll get a chance to check them out again because, man, going back to this album was a lot of fucking fun. And honestly, most of their discography is absolutely killer. If you slept on this band for whatever reason, I doubt many of you did. Like, this is like me saying, have you ever heard of Killswitch Engage? Because most people fucking have. But if you haven't, definitely check this out. This is an absolutely amazing album. Again, this probably will appeal more to thrash fans than it does like metalcore and hardcore fans, but it kind of found a nice fucking balance between there, like the art of it or something. There was probably a better joke there, but I fucking missed it. But the main point is, check this album out. It's fucking amazing, and I'm hoping for more Shadows Fall in the future. All right, well, that knocks out Massachusetts, at least as far as metalcore and hardcore goes. I could return to that state for some other stuff because there's a lot of fucking bands out of there, and I'm starting to find that out because I actually did organize out something to where I have like a template in terms of figuring out what I'm going to cover for each state. And I'll tell you what, some of you states, y'all need some fucking more metal bands for damn sure. I'm going to have to combine some states to actually cover some shit in terms of like making it a longer video. Otherwise, I'm going to be talking about like 2 bands and then on to the next state. But yeah, I'm not really sure which one I'm going to do next. Maybe a return to death metal. There's definitely some fierce death metal states that I could cover, but there's also some of the states that have some really cool scenes that are outside of that as well. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments. You want me to go do a death metal state? Because I have 2 in mind right away, but there's also some other states that have some really cool scenes as well that I can go over. And you know, there's some states out there that don't really have a scene, but they do have some killer metal that is just kind of all over the map. Either way, let me know down in the comments. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our shop is there. We do need to reload on shirts, but there's also a link to our Patreon there where you can help us out if you so choose. As of right now on Patreon, I believe we are done with our polls in terms of figuring out which bands we are going to cover in the next batch of rankings. We will make that announcement at the end of the Crowbar ranking, which we are currently working on right now in terms of like listening, taking all the notes. This is a bigger discography, so it's going to take a little bit longer. But we will be making that announcement at the end of that video. And of course, Denver Death Fest will be taking place in Denver because obvious reasons. April 20th through April 22nd. We will be making an announcement in terms of the lineup come the new year, and believe me, I am eager to see it too because I haven't seen it. So, you know, this is mostly Miller and John's thing, but I'm excited to see what all we got, and looking forward to seeing some of you guys there. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that jazz. It is currently in full holiday fucking madness right here, right now. Actually, right now it is a fucking Arctic wasteland outside. I think it is like -4 outside with a 50-mile-an-hour icy fucking wind going on. So, fuck the outside world, at least today. But, yeah, the holidays are insane already. But I suppose it's a good kind of insane because, you know, this is the season of being kind and giving and all that shit. And I just want to say thank you all so damn much for building up this channel. It's absolutely amazing to see it grow, and you guys are the fucking reason. So just know that we appreciate the living fuck out of you guys. Y'all fucking rule, and we will catch you later.